at Buttonwillow Raceway with the Lightfighter version 2, taking it for its maiden voyage. Finally got this thing running on Monday after months of work. So we're gonna see if all the bolts are tight. I'm gonna see if all the bolts are tight. I'm gonna find out, hopefully not the hard way. We're just gonna go through some general testing, see how all the systems work, you know, a very preliminary shakedown run to see if any changes need to be made, what adjustments we need to make, and just get a feel for all the systems and how everything works. So this is the, like I said, the maiden voyage for Lightfighter version 2. Fingers crossed everything goes well.
Of course, he's been involved as we've developed the bike, so he's pretty familiar with all the parts and seeing pictures of it coming together, but this is the first time that he's seen it in person. Seemed like he was pretty pleased, which is a good start. Looks like we took a lot of the information from his positioning on the bike that he wanted to improve and made those improvements, but we really won't know until he rides it, right? So now that we've got a stiff carbon tail, Mike Wheeler measured the sag and he was like, oh yeah, we're gonna need to go to a lighter string rate.
Which I was kind of saying all along.
Which you were saying all along.
Probably at most 5 laps. If something feels off on the first lap, I'll pull off on the first lap, but if there's nothing glaringly wrong or bad or needing of adjustment, then I'll probably stay out for 3, 4, 5 laps, come in and then have a debrief. It's all fully gassed up, all the oil is
oh, okay. Well, that's good.
It's got no oil, by the way.
It's got when you say if you were to become separated from this bike and plug in the track, how do we shut it off so that we don't
same thing, switch? Same kill switch like a gas bike.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that if we were to twist the throttle,
right now you can twist it right now. It's off.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
It's the same kill switch as a gas bike.
Okay.
Last year we raced the Lightfighter LFR19, which was kind of this whole idea of taking a more conventional approach to suspension geometry on an electric motorcycle and seeing what kind of performance level we could get to. So we really went into that first bike with little to no expectations, and luckily along the way kind of accumulated some pretty good results and gathered some interest from some other people that were interested in the program. And so luckily enough, with the help of Joe Caravonen from Kramer Motorcycles, some great technical partners, Ferris Energy, Parker Hannafin, Troy's on board to ride, we were able to pull off a V2, a version 2 of the bike, and make some improvements to what was a pretty good start with V1. I've always been into performance vehicles. I've always been into alternative energy as a power source for vehicles, and I've been into motorcycles, so here we are with a high-performance electric motorcycle, and this is a great creative outlet for me, and it's something that I've been doing really for over 10 years now. I went to the very first TTX GP race at the Isle of Man. That was back in 2009. And then I had the opportunity to run a race team with a company called Bramo. We had a professional electric motorcycle race team. I was able to take a team back to the Isle of Man in 2015 and 2016 and get some good results there. And then I was able to take an electric bike to Pikes Peak and finish second overall in 2016 with Don Kane from Cycle World. So I've been working on electric race bikes for over 10 years with companies, and now this is my own thing. This is my personal creative outlet to try out some ideas that we couldn't quite get to on those commercial programs. And I'll say that, you know, this was a big effort between a big team. It was me and Eli, but it had support from, I mean, my dad's out here helping us. We have Joe and Marcus from Kramer Motorcycles, the guys at Parker Hannafin that helped with the motor, the guys at Ferris's Energy who have helped with the battery, and Tyson Krupp, Tyson Krupp's new for this year. They've provided these beautiful carbon fiber wheels. They're, you know, the highest quality, I mean, lightest weight wheel I've ever seen for a motorcycle, and we've got 2 sets of them to race on our bike, which is pretty awesome. So the project's attracted some additional support, and the bike that you see there is the result of those partners coming on board. And so it's been kind of this, there was a strong foundation laid, but then it's been built on over the last 2 years to get to where we're at. So when you look at the bike today, it can, I think it's impressive, and I think some others think it's impressive, but I also see all the work that's gone into it from more than just myself and Eli.
The goal here was to go club racing with it, and club races generally last anywhere between 5 to 10 laps depending on where you are. Sure, Isle of Man, it's a huge place, 38 miles long with just full throttle the whole time. You need a giant battery to handle all that, but for your average road course club race type of situation, you don't need a battery that big, and that adds a lot of weight. And so this battery and this motor configuration and just the whole thing in general brings the weight down significantly. For reference, the Moto E electric racing bikes that race alongside MotoGP probably weigh high 500s, and the Lightfighter weighs, I think it was 350, 375, somewhere in that ballpark. So it's a big weight difference. And we met up here at Buttonwillow. There goes nothing. Just about a little over a year now when I first rode version 1, and Brian was very timid, didn't really say much, and I'm like, why are you so timid, man? He goes, well, in case you hate the thing, I'm ready to pack it all up and drive home.
Yeah, I'm still, you know, getting loose myself, so there's more in both of us.
Okay, good.
But yeah, this will be fun.
All right.
Sweet.
I'm like, what are you talking about? This thing is awesome. And suddenly his demeanor relaxed.
I'm gonna make you famous, Brian. You're gonna be a YouTube celebrity.
I've done that, got the t-shirt, not always packed up.
You're telling me, man.
He got super excited, and we fine-tuned that bike into something pretty awesome. Won some races with it, but there were some fundamental things that needed changing and addressing that basically required a whole new motorcycle be built. Long story short, the chassis was pretty much overly stiff. There was too much bracing on the chassis, and there wasn't enough chassis flex to absorb bumps when you were hard leaned over, and when the suspension can't really do its thing, the chassis has to make up for that. And version 1, there were some limitations with that, along with some other stuff too, but that was a big one. And so version 2 was always in the cards. It was just a matter of what would happen with version 2. What improvements were they going to make with version 2? And so here we are. It is now July in Buttonwillow, in 107-degree heat, trying version 2 for the very first time to see, you know, if those changes they made worked, to see how the bike would handle 107-degree heat. We did a race with version 1 last year here at Buttonwillow 2, and it was 108 degrees, and it handled it fine. I mean, yeah, we were reaching the limits of heat tolerance and thermal capacity, but you know, those things are built into the safety margins of the bike, and you know, everything worked. The gas bikes are running hot too, so heat is a thing that internal combustion bikes and electrics and humans have to deal with, and the Lightfighter came out strong. I think we probably won a race, I think, with version 1.
Yeah!
And so the difference with version 2 is it's a whole new chassis. Eli built a whole new chassis with less bracing to account for the chassis flex that I was asking for previously. And the long and short version of how we ended up here today, what we're here to do.
Found some missing horsepowers.
That looked good.
Yeah, it looks like last year with the setting we ran at Barber, we were running maybe around 125 horsepower at the rear wheel. So after about 30 minutes of tuning, it looks looks like we're maybe around 140 horsepower, so pretty significant improvement.
Yeah. What's it doing on torque?
Last year's bike was around 200 foot-pounds at the crank, or at the counter shaft, and now we're probably around 240 foot-pounds. This flat section is the continuous power section, up at higher speed, and so that's after torque kind of starts falling off. We try to, ideally this would be perfectly flat, but you can't ever exactly achieve that. You can see we can hit a higher peak, but like you said, we fall off more on the back end. So the way I've left it set up on the bike is actually the red line. So you would think that chasing after the peak power would be the right goal, but from my experience, the riders always appreciate this more predictable curve. You know, if we ended up at a really fast track, we might go after that peak power, because it still looks very, you know, if this was really peaky and then it fell and looked like a point, then I'd be concerned, but it looks really well controlled in terms of fading back into this region. Battery's pretty cool when you pull all the bodywork off, because you can see that it's all of the electronics that used to be behind the head tube in V1 are now located inside the battery, in the top of the battery. And so when the contactor is shut off and the bike's off like this, there's no high voltage anywhere at all, which is great from a safety perspective. But then it just keeps everything really clean. And so the idea is that at some point in the future, if you had a second battery, you could pull off this small piece of bodywork, unclip the DC from the top, and then drop the battery out the bottom of the bike, slide it to the side, and get a new battery in there. And it looks conceptually like it would work. We would have to build a second battery and actually try to do it. So I guess, you know, it takes an hour to recharge the bike, but you can probably do a battery swap in 10-15 minutes.
That motor, maybe it's just been a few months away from it and I kind of forgot the sensation of it all, but oh my god, the thing hauls ass. What a motorcycle. So the drama is when I'm on the brakes, especially hard on the brakes, the front end feels like it's oscillating in place. Clearly a bad sign. Doesn't really give you much confidence when you're hard on the brakes. I really don't think it's up there. I could be wrong, but I've just got a strong suspicion it's that rotor.
Yeah, you know what I would do? To tell if this is the brake rotor, I would roll real slow through the pit here and just ease the lever on with your finger and see if you can feel it pulsate. If you don't feel it pulsate, it's not the rotor.
So Brian sanded the disc down a little bit to get the old pad material off, and we rebedded the brake pads properly. Went back out there this last session, and wouldn't you know it, I go on the brakes and it works like it's supposed to work. So I came around this last bend, I gave Brian the thumbs up sign as he was standing right by there on the end of the pit wall, and I could see his hands raised in the air. So I was like, cool, we're on to something good here. What's the next issue we need to solve and find out? I don't need TC because it's all right here. You have all that torque, and you don't need TC because you can just dial it on as smooth as butter.
Can you gear it if you want peak power at 140 miles an hour? You got to gear it here?
Yes.
Is that right?
That's right. That's right.
When it feels like that, like you've run out of like rush that you get, does the chassis seem freer?
My short answer that I question is no.
Even after the power starts to feel like
Yeah.
it falls off, it still feels.
Right. Because it's always there.
It's always pushing.
It's always pushing. And the part, at the point where it's not, is when you hit the brakes. That's kind of the feeling I'm getting from my blood. It always feels, you know, and now that you put it in the gas comparison, yeah, I see what you're saying. No, it always feels like you're at that point until it, you know, it's time to brake and turn.
Have X mass and you're trying to accelerate it, right?
Yep.
And so, and the only thing you can accelerate it with is the grip on the tire.
Yep.
So theoretically, you should be able to open the gas until you can't accelerate that mass from that speed at the rate that the power output's trying to accelerate. You should be able to get it there, and we can get it smooth.
Yeah, theoretically you are correct. I am not a skilled enough rider or brave enough rider to experiment with those methodologies on a prototype motorcycle.
Right. Well, at least where you're at right now, and where the machine is.
At this point, yeah. So yeah, it was about my time to finally see what the bike could do in this first phase. And then I came around turn 2, got on the power, and the bike died.
You know how every time we step up the performance, we find the next weakest link? We found the next weakest link. So we did the dyno test. I pushed the power level up, and now the motor controller, the inverter, overheated because it's now dumping more power than it ever has before. So we may be to the point where we need to consider a separate cooling circuit just for it. And we didn't run into this with V1 because we weren't running this much power through it.
And so the bike cut out on me when I was out there. I coasted to a corner worker station, got safely out of the way, turned the bike off, let everything cool down for a minute, turned it back on, and coasted back in the pits. You know, not the way we wanted to end the day, but we learned stuff. You know, this is why we're here. We're here to test the bike. It's the first time out. This is the Maiden Voyage. They completed it a week ago, and so there's obviously going to be teething issues to sort out, things you're gonna find out, and we found some things out. So Brian and Eli are gonna go back to the drawing board, try and look at the data, see what issues popped up, what they can fix. Also take a look at all the positives that came from the data, and we can maybe in a few days or a few weeks time start drawing comparisons between version 1 and version 2 and see where the new bike is better compared to the old bike.
I mean, the whole project is born out of a curiosity that I've always had for electric motorcycles, and so every step of the way I've learned something about what makes them better, or where we find better lap times and better performance, and what does, a lot of times I just find out what doesn't work. But so I'm really just hoping to kind of extend that learning and see if we can go that little bit further than we were able to go last year. It's certainly nice to win. I'd like to just see us be competitive with some top bikes and top riders. So this bike was built to not have excuses. So I don't want it to be, yeah, the performance is great for an electric. I want it to be the performance is great, period. You know, there's some interested parties talking about, well, you know, could this become a commercial product? Maybe, we'll see. It's not my end goal here. I'd just like to push the technology forward, and at the end of the day, if this is what becomes an inspiration for the future designers to consider electric when they're designing the coolest new Superbike, that would be a win for me too.
I think to frame version 2, I need to start with version 1. And with version 1, I didn't know what to expect. I've never ridden such a dedicated racing motorcycle before, and like we mentioned this off camera a few times. We tested here last year with version 1. I lost count. 5, 6, 7
Yeah,
times to the
yeah.
point where we literally said to ourselves,
We're not coming back here.
Yeah, we're not coming back here. I don't know what else we can do to this motorcycle other than go race. And we did. We went racing against gas bikes, and we won. Which, I don't know about you, but it wasn't my expectation.
Right.
Until we got to the weekend and we were riding around, realizing, holy crap, like we could really do some damage this weekend, and we did.
Yeah.
And that kind of got the ball rolling to, in my mind, I'm sure you agree too, that I think we're onto something here.
Yeah.
And you know, you were on your game thinking of ways to make that bike better. I was on my game thinking, how can I help you make the bike better, and how can I personally, you know, stay sharp as a rider to you know, reach those goals. And so now with version 2, we have that framework of version 1 to fall back on, and the expectation, at least I do, the expectation that developed because of version 1
Sure.
to now where I have my own pressure to perform.
Yeah,
Whereas,
I agree. I feel that same pressure is a little bit higher than it was last year.
Whereas
because
last
of
year
that
it was
expectation.
wide open,
Yeah.
we take what we get.
But I also think that our confidence in what we can achieve is higher too. So pressure is higher, confidence level is higher as well. So maybe pressure is a little bit higher.
Who knows? I mean, it's day 1.
Yeah.
I think today is literally day 1. So it's yeah. So my goals for this project, or my primary goal for this project, is to extract the most from myself and the most from the motorcycle that I can, and the results will be whatever they are. After all these years I've been riding motorcycles for a living, I've never been asked to help develop a motorcycle from basically ground zero. You know, it's usually the bikes I hop on, somebody else has done this job to bring it to where the masses can ride it, no matter what your skill level is.
It's a blessing and a curse, I think. Sometimes you win the race, and other times you get stuck out on track.
It is, but I'm fortunate enough to be put in this position at a time in my career and my life where I'm actually maybe best equipped for that role. I have my past experience of riding. I don't even know how many motorcycles I've ridden nowadays. To know, okay, it shouldn't be doing that. Oh, it does this really well. We can change this to make it work well, or that is completely the wrong. Like, I have that frame set, the framework in my mind, just from my experience, to know what's good and bad.
Sure.
Are there better riders out there who can extract more and go faster? Absolutely. But I'm gonna hide all of them from you until we're done here. Yeah, I don't take this opportunity lightly or for granted at all. I know I'm a very lucky soul to be the one on that seat. So it's a big responsibility to me for a number of reasons, but I think the attraction to this project for me was where you are pretty methodical in the steps to take. That's like, we're going to focus on this thing, and if that's good, we'll focus on the next thing. There's a step and a process to everything,
Right.
with achievable goals in mind. I'm so glad I'm back for round 2 of this whole thing.
Yeah. Well, you're not just the rider now. So the bike that we have now is there are pieces on it that are the way they are because of your input from P1. So.
Which is wild to think about.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Yeah. I'm leaving, probably give my satisfaction level kind of 80%. If we had done that race simulation, it would have pegged it to 100. But we'll get there. There are some benefits of it's the same motor and controller package that we ran last year, so we're pulling more power out of it, but we know that that package can be very reliable. So I think that's going to be a benefit to us. We just got to chase out some of these last issues. I love the sport, and I believe that this is the inevitable future of our sport. And I don't agree with the idea that you have to give anything up when we go to electric power or more sustainable forms of energy. I think it's really a question of focus and resource and interest and initiative, and not a question of whether it's possible. And I think this bike is proving that. Again, I've ridden these bikes. I know when you're out on the track, it is awesome to ride this bike, and it pains me that we can't get more riders to experience that, because they would instantly understand that they're not missing the sound, or they're not missing the gear shifts, or they're not missing the rumble between their legs, because they get so much more out of the ride with electric. They get more feel. It's so smooth. There's so much torque. When you're out on a track day like this, especially if you've got the rider skill that Troy has, it's like shooting fish in a barrel passing riders. When you've got all that drive available coming out of the corner, you can pick your spot on track, and you think you want to be there, and you're there. And I want more people to experience that.